Oh my God, how did he get away with it for so long? Basically in broad daylight. How did he keep getting away with it? You have to forgive me, but as a survivor of shit, a black woman, and an entertainer, I'm gonna be really bitchy about this. Let's see, where do we start running down the list? We all know the only good victim is a one. When victims ask for help, it very rarely comes in time, if they're even believed at all. When you're dealing with a narcissistic sociopath, they find out that their victim asked for help. Usually, all you've likely done is piss them off. Usually in a show of power and intimidation, they make things worse for the victim. They escalate to teach them a lesson. By the way, unfortunately, I know all of this firsthand. Let's see, what else? Oh, when a bulk of the victims are black women, help is even less likely to come in time because black women are disposable. Honestly, the black community and adjacent communities such as the hip-hop and rap and R&B circuit always been willing to sacrifice the health and safety of black women in order to protect problematic black men. Very often in our community, toxic masculinity is celebrated. Men that protect and respect black women are made fun of. Very often their masculinity is called into question, which, speaking of, is not all the victims were women. The weaponization of queerphobia was definitely a factor in keeping people quiet. In these spaces where toxic heteronormative masculinity is celebrated, queerness is seen as a joke. And so if any of these men had come forward, they likely wouldn't have been seen as a victim. They likely would have just been butts of jokes, including coming from some of y'all. By some of y'all, I mean both men and women. A lot of the men, especially in this world, that tend to be platformed, they carry a certain aura of machismo, of this tough guy shit, this projection of power and this air of narcissism that is celebrated by weak men. Very often like to project themselves onto these men and be like, oh my God, I could be like him, he's my hero. In favor of protecting the image of their toxic hero, the victims are an acceptable sacrifice. When the victims come forward, the explanations that will be given will be, oh, they're just trying to take down a successful black man. They're just looking for a payday. Come on, we all saw what happened with R. Kelly's victims. A number of his victims were black women, and a big chunk of the black community rallied around him, including other black women. Protecting his image was more important than looking into what happened to these women. If you're currently being victimized by Diddy, but you're seeing what's happening to R. Kelly's victims, why in the fuck would you think that it's safe to speak out? So when abusers abuse, especially when the abuse is so elaborate, they're rarely running this operation by themselves. 9 times out of 10, they have flying monkeys, which honestly, saying that is an affront to witches. They have flying monkeys to help them run this operation, and very often these flying monkeys are rewarded for helping them carry this villainous shit out. Sometimes they're also threatened, but a lot of the time, they're rewarded. The abusers ain't shit, and then they surround themselves with other ain't shit people that don't have as much power and influence and money to just do whatever they want. But they will absolutely latch on to the abuser's golden titty because they also ain't shit. They also see people as things and tools to get to where they want to be. Because of a little thing called mutually assured destruction, that if the abuser goes down, then so do they, because their name is all over this group project. It's absolutely something that's threatened by the abuser. They're absolutely going to do their part to make sure that all this shit is covered up. This is the part where I drag some of y'all. I believe that this is true in every corner of society, but people are only comfortable with someone else succeeding to the point that it doesn't make them feel uncomfortable or insecure. Unfortunately, for a lot of people in general, once you achieve a level of success that they perceive is above them, that gives them, in their mind, free reign to treat you like shit. Once somebody reaches celebrity status, and it doesn't even have to be A-list status, a bunch of y'all are giddy to dehumanize them. You're giddy, you're excited to minimize their problems. You are excited to say because you are pretty, because you have perceived wealth, because you have perceived success, you could never be a victim of anything because you're doing better than me. Oh my God, Nikki, you're just sticking up for rich people. They're not gonna pick you. I once saw a TikTok on here of somebody complaining about people that rub their wealth in people's faces on social media. They were talking about someone who could afford the new AirPods. It literally does not take much Especially if this person that is also a victim is marginalized. Oh my God, the vitriol for them for doing well in life. If they're a child, oh, they're achieving all this fame and money at a young age. I never got to do that. I remember when Taraji P. Henson tried to talk about the wage gap between black women actors and everybody else, and y'all told her to shut the fuck up. I wish that I at least have what you have. You should be grateful. Y'all are so excited to bully somebody that is likely not going to answer you. You are so blinded by jealousy that you don't realize, you don't think about the fact that even if you're pretty, even if you have influence and perceived wealth and perceived power, if you're marginalized, if you have a marginalized identity, if you're a child, if you're a woman of color, if you are queer, that still makes you vulnerable. You don't think about the fact that if these well-known people with perceived social capital can be abused in broad daylight, how many other victims of this abuser are not well-known, don't have the money, don't have the power, don't have the influence? Their names are not known to y'all, and so they don't even have fame as a possible buffer to give credence to any of their claims if they come forward as a victim. A victim who is well known and successful is worried about coming forward and being believed. What makes you think that some of these lesser known victims would feel comfortable coming forward saying anything? Just for y'all to be like, oh, another nobody looking for a payday, and risk pissing this guy off so he can just make the horrors worse for them. What's more, y'all get a kick out of sacrificing every few years a pretty successful woman. I've seen more edits of conspiracy theories about Beyonce and her supposed involvement in Diddy's bullshit than I've seen content about Diddy himself. I will always find some way to make it a woman's fault, especially a successful black woman, as several of these victims were. Why would they feel confident coming forward knowing how you're gonna treat them? Lastly, I need y'all to at least try to understand the grim reality of victimhood. These sociopaths orchestrate situations for the victim and people that know what's happening and may want to help the victim. Even the best fiction writer on earth couldn't come up with. Things they'll do to maintain control. In my situation, my abuser was a raggedy bitch who was just an Air Force major. This is a bitch who was not P. Diddy. We suspect that this bitch had the office bugged with listening devices, took the instant messenger off of my computer so that I could not easily contact other people for help, put spyware on my computer to mirror my monitor so she could see what I was doing and who I was contacting at all times, had me followed on and off base. Behest of people who were trying to help me, including on-base personnel. I was checking my car in the undercarriage every day for explosives, for planted drugs. My husband had a go bag in the back of our SUV in case this woman showed up to harm us and we had to go AWOL and skip town. Anyone that knew and was trying to help me had to be very careful about when they did it, about how they did it. Again, if help didn't come in a timely manner, all you'd be doing is pissing her off so she could make things worse for me. After I finally filed a report on her, she did make things worse for me. My life absolutely did get worse. So having proximity to help is not the flex that you think it is when you are dealing with a sociopath. I finally filed an Inspector General report on my abuser. I didn't do it at the Inspector General office. The problem is it was located a very short drive away from my building, and Equal Opportunity was right next door to my building. Sounds really nice and convenient, unless you're being followed. This woman knew how much danger I was in. She had me drive to her house in the dead of night, to her house in the middle of like nowhere in North Dakota. I had to weave through the town and take alternate routes to make sure somebody wasn't tailing me. I filed my report at her house because that was the only safe way I could do that. These crazy, villainous people make themselves omnipotent to their victims. They make themselves gods. They will not only threaten the victim, but they will threaten other people that try to help them. Time I would drive out to an empty field on base to have lunch by myself so I could see if somebody was following me, number one. Number two, I didn't want her to see me being social. I didn't want her to see me being supported. I didn't want her to see me with my friends. I was afraid that she would do something to them. And I was afraid that if she saw me being supported and happy in any way, she would make things worse for me too. This is just a raggedy bitch in the Air Force. Imagine the resources that Sean P. Diddy Combs has. White knight situation is just not realistic. It is a fantasy. I'll close this by saying the abusers know all of this. They know how to pick the right victims, especially when they know how y'all will treat them. Y'all won't care until they're on a t-shirt. By then, it's too late. They've already got away with it. How many of y'all care more to circulate rumors of Beyonce being involved in Aaliyah's assassination than on Diddy himself? Obviously, a lot of y'all still don't care about the victims. You just want tea. Justice is going to be served. We need to wake up, grow the fuck up, and realize the situation for the complexity that it has. Y'all wanted to know how? From my perspective, that's how. You're welcome.